So today we're working on building the elevators. And they had a couple of parts. They were the top and bottom of the elevators themselves. There were a couple of tiny little pieces that you can barely see that they go on the edges, and then there's that middle piece that's going to become clear what that's for in a second. I put the rudder together already, and I kind of botched it up twice. But this time I think I got these. So it's actually kind of ingenious how they go together. First thing is you basically glue that little tab along that center dotted line onto either the top or the bottom, and you get that glued in nice and straight. And here I'm just taking a little bit of glue and putting it along the tab on one side of the dotted line, and then I'll stick the top piece onto it and let that dry. And then what we're going to end up doing is forming that into an actual little curved shape. And I'll show you what that means in a second. Because you think of the leading edge of an elevator is curved when it fits into where the stabilizer is. So, because there'd be like a tube in there. And so that's in there. And that'll become clear in a second. So I put those pieces in there. Very commonly you push down to kind of make things adhere. And I tend to take my little metal ruler and set it over a part that I want it to be nice and solid. And I'll kind of squash it down a little bit, put a little pressure on there, and that helps the glue, I think, to distribute and set a little bit. So now you've got these two elevator pieces. And if you look, these pieces are these little round little ball on the ends of each of those, and they're different sizes, and you can really use them to make curves. But if you look, there's a slit that cuts there. There's another slit that's cut right there. And what that's going to do is make that whole part that I'm outlining actually curve around and meet each other. So those will actually be curved. So I'm going to take this little ball thing. I'm going to put the paper on the back side of a mouse pad. It provides support, but it also is squishy. And so you can push into a piece of paper and it leaves an impression. So I hold those pieces down and I just sort of go back and forth where the curve is going to be. And it's hard to tell, but as I'm doing this, I'm putting a little pressure on there and I'm actually curving the paper. So when I lift that piece up, you'll see that there's a curve that's been induced into there. And then you sort of tweak it with your finger or a pair of tweezers or what have you, and you get that to be curved. And that's going to be the piece that butts up into the hinge area of the elevator, or of the stabilizer. Do the same thing with this side. Even though it's got a second piece of paper, it still works. Take this little ball-shaped thing, and you run it back and forth where the curve is supposed to be, and it starts to roll up, and you kind of hint to the paper where you want it to go, and it starts to form the shape that you want. And here I'm tweaking it a little bit more. You can see it rolling over. And now I'm going to check and see if this fits. You can see where that tab is used, that big long tab with the dotted line. That's that center piece, and there you can see it curve a little bit better. It's not bad. Take a pair of tweezers and just kind of squish it. Make sure the glue is stuck on there nice and dry. And now I'm going to take the other piece of the elevator that has that little cup shape on the leading edge. I'm going to set it on and should be able to glue it together. So I do a little test fit, and it's going to fit right together like so. So now I speed this up on purpose because this is really boring. I'm just putting a little bit of glue on that surface, and then I put those two pieces together. And you just spend some time cupping these together and squashing them and making sure that they are fit and that they start to glue together. They're going to be your leading edge of the elevator. And because you've already curved them, they're going to actually make a nice shape and fit really well into a pocket on the stabilizer. And now I'm testing to make sure that if you pull it back and put the little trailing edges together, they actually fit, and they're going to work real nice. So now what I do is those two little pieces, you can see a green one there, the tiny little pieces are pieces that go in between the top and the bottom layer of the elevator. What they're going to do is be on the edges where you need a little bit of shape and where things will be seen, and you'll understand in a second. Like right there, in that piece, you got to put some glue in there, and you got to put this tiny, tiny little triangular piece. It's a lot easier than it looks. It turns out it's, again, designed so well that when you slide those pieces in there, they go in with relative ease. So you just take a pair of tweezers, you slide those in very carefully, and then you sort of just tweak it and play around with it and sandwich it until it is on the very edge, and so that when you clamp down gently, you've got a solid piece. And there I'm cutting out, moving a little bit of glue and using my finger as a way to put the piece of paper right where it's supposed to be. And that piece is in, so now I decided I better put the other side in. I could have done that all at once, but I didn't think about it. I thought it wouldn't fit as well as it did, and it fit beautifully. So then I'm really delicate there, a little piece of pressure, a little bit of pressure, and get off the excess glue, give it a little squeeze, hold it for just a few seconds, and there it is, held together. Looks really good, actually, in person. So now you have to put another piece on this side, and the side that's going to be up against the fuselage. And that has a shape, and we're going to put that one in. And before I did that, I decided to may as well color that leading edge because I had a little bit of white paper showing through. Turned out it wasn't that visible anyway, so I didn't probably really need to do that, but just to make sure, I put that in there as a little bit of insurance. But now I'm going to turn my attention to that last edge, and I'll take the little piece, and because of this thing, that's where it's going to fit, and because there's an actual bend in there, you need to take this little piece, grab it with the tweezers, and give a very slight bend right on the tweezers. And that's going to fit in then really nicely right where that angle is. Just like that. That's how that'll fit when it comes time. Just got to figure out how to hold it to put it in. And then once it looks like it's going to fit, do the same thing. Add a little glue, put the piece in there, use the tweezers again, and very carefully add it. Now I learned my lesson and decided I may as well put glue on both sides this time, because then why just do it once? Make sure it's in there, make sure you got enough glue, and then when you put that piece in there and give a little pressure, it will stick and it will be straight. You just can't put too much pressure on it, because if you do, you'll squash the whole thing and it'll fall over flat. But if you're just kind of delicate, it's amazing how it goes together. Fits, and you've got the overall shape right there of the elevator. So the rest of this is sped up because all I'm doing now is getting the trailing edge, and I'm very carefully tweaking and pinching and just trying to get the trailing edge down. Then I noticed I didn't fit it as well as I wanted to, and I actually had to color in some of the green, but that was my own fault. I should have been more careful. But there's a done elevator. Then I decided I may as well go ahead and stick it to the stabilizer, and I have to flip up the little tabs out of the parts where I guess the hinges would have been on the real airplane. So I have a place to put the elevator to the stabilizer. I test fit it because it's curved. It fits really nicely in there, and it looks very scale-like. Now I wish I'd have done the ailerons this way, but I lost patience and didn't do that. But now you just take a little bit of glue and you add it along the line. And this one I put on too much glue and I squirted a whole bunch onto the fin as well, but that comes off easy. That's part of the beauty of having the everything coated with a little Krylon clear. So that works very well. But now you just put this in and spend a little time tweaking it, making sure that the angle matches your other elevator that I've already put in. The other thing you should do is make sure that your control stick is deflected forward. Now in this case, I didn't do that because I forgot to do it in the first place, and now I don't want to break the canopy or the cockpit to do it. But if someone saw it in the model table, the first thing they do is notice that the joystick is just vertical and neutral, and it's supposed to be pushed forward towards the instrument panel based on how I have these drooped. But oh well, I don't mind. And now I'm just spending some time making sure that it looks even and square and straight. And there's the back end. Then I have to make sure my little hinge tabs are pushed and that they are down and attached. And you get enough time with this glue to play around with it, which is nice. But it tacks quickly, which is nice too. It doesn't dry solid for a little while, so you can still play around with it. And there I'm scraping off a little excess glue. But there they are, and I gotta say they look really nice. And like I said, I wish I'd done the ailerons, and I wish I cut the flaps out and dropped the flaps. Every picture I see of the airplane has dropped flaps. Something else I did that didn't record was I finished sandwiching the wheels. Now those have to be sanded, and I'll show you how that works. And I also cut out openings for the machine guns. So in this early model Messerschmit, the machine guns were buried, and there were just holes. And so I drilled a tiny hole, and then I took a toothpick, which is what I'm showing there, and just kind of enlarged the hole till it looked about right. I did the same thing on the other side. And those look pretty nice now that they're in there. They're they look like there's something embedded in there, and that's where the muzzle would shoot from. Again, it's an early mark, so it doesn't have the cannon sticking out. But there's the bottom part of the tail and the top, and the whole thing, I have to say, looks really nice. And now most of the major parts are done.